I'm Minnie Scott, founder of Widow's World. Welcome. We're delighted to have you here for another session of Widows Talk. Today our guest is Pat Van Gorder, a very special friend. She is an author, a speaker, a Bible study leader, and always a friend. Welcome.
Thank you, Minnie. It's great to be here with you today. I can't believe we're here. Can you?
No, I know. It's wonderful.
I know.
It is. One of the things, shortly after I moved here, we encountered and began a relationship that seems like it's lasted forever.
I don't know about forever, but I remember when you came to the first Stonecroft Women's Connection,
Mm-hmm.
and Marilyn, who was your guest before this, brought you as a guest.
Yes.
And we sat together, and right away, I knew you were leadership material.
Mm.
So I didn't give you much of a choice, but we visited, and I knew that our team was in transition and that we would be looking for a chair for our group. And I had my eye on you, but I didn't say anything then. But later we talked about it, the team, and you were just spot on for the job, Minnie. And you came on board as chair for North Coast Women's Connection, and I served with you on the team. I was a prayer coordinator. And also at that time, I was the guide for Bible studies, and you started attending right away. We had like 5 of us.
Right.
So today, we're still in studies together, and we are virtual, and we have 20 in our Wednesday study and 25 in our Thursday.
It's absolutely amazing.
It is. Just like our friendship has bloomed, so has our Bible studies. So
Yes.
I love it. I love the connection.
I do too. And it's so important for women. I would say mission accomplished when you decided I was going to be chair. Thank you very much. That lasted for 2 years.
I know. That's all we want you for.
Oh, good.
Move on.
I didn't know I'd finished my obligation.
You did.
But today I really wanted to talk about, because you're not a widow and you're happily married to a wonderful man named Larry.
I am.
Yeah, he's really super. But you and Larry too have been so faithful and such an encourager to widows and widowers both. How do you actually approach that? Because it's a difficult situation when you walk into knowing someone's hurting.
Well, if I might address really right up front about widows, because I have always connected with women. My personal relationships and my acquaintances, even casual acquaintances, are so special in my life. Because I really feel that women's friendships help to fill the emotional gaps in our lives, and they help to soothe that turmoil of the inner world, which we all know as stress, right?
Absolutely.
Been there.
I've been there, done that one.
That's exactly right.
For
Minnie.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Pat, you have a wonderful saying that I've always loved, and that is friends are like walls. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Well, friends are like walls. Sometimes you lean on them, and sometimes you're grateful just knowing that they're there. Mm-hmm. Yes, I feel that women are such a source of strength for each other. Mm-hmm. We nurture one another, and we share things about our lives and about our feelings. But I do believe that women cover up things. They cover up their feelings, their emotions. But we share things about our feelings and emotions, women do together. But I also believe that women at times, they cannot express themselves because their sorrows and their hurts, that sometimes we don't have words to express the emotions deep within. And I've thought about that. As you say, Minnie, I'm not a widow. And I thought about those women that there aren't words to express. And I thought about the earliest stages of grief. And that's where the shock of it all, trying to absorb it, is just raw at that time. Mm-hmm. And the disbelief.
You experienced that yourself with your granddaughter.
I have. And I do want to talk about her. But for them, that widow that you asked how I would approach that. In the earliest stages, I think it's probably so raw, and there aren't words. And so in that state, as a friend for her, I just, I allow the silence to speak.
Yeah. So
And
good.
I am the wall that she can lean on. We don't need words. And I really am acquainted with grief. Minnie, we lost our first granddaughter, Jessica. She was 3 years old to leukemia. And it was so quick. I mean, she was a vivacious little 3-year-old. And then from the time we learned she had leukemia till we removed life support was 3 weeks. And Larry and I had already planned to move to California from Colorado. So 2 months after she died, we boarded up everything and came to California. And so moving and loss were two major things. And I understand when you lose a spouse, that's a lot the way it goes. Moving, loss, the whole thing. But anyway, it was so tragic for me. I mean, I would walk on the beach, which I had always wanted to my whole life to do, and see little 3-year-old girls running through the water and everything. So sad. So I sought out Stonecroft. I had been active in it in Colorado, and I thought, I need to go to a luncheon, I need to do something for myself. And so I went. And I don't know, I think it was too soon, because I walked into that room where I didn't know anybody. And everybody, oh, how are you, and everything, and I'm going, oh, yeah, I'm fine. They could never have known what I was going through.
So typical of widows.
Yes, it is.
And you were a widow at the time, but it's the same process.
It's the loss and the grief. And grief it has many faces. And Minnie, as you know, I speak at Stonecroft events, and when I always go to the door as they leave, and the minute a woman takes my hand and looks into my eyes, and I look into hers, and I see that grief and pain, I recognize it. And because grief isn't always the loss of a husband, as we said.
Exactly.
So I think I have a fairly good feeling about it.
Yes, you do. You do. You understand it. And one of the things that you pointed out early in this conversation was that it's really up to the widow to reach out. And they'll reach out. They have, the wall that you're talking about, that barrier. But they hide behind so many emotions, and it takes trust. It takes all of those things, and that's building a relationship with that person. But if they trust you, then they can express it.
That's right.
The one thing that I do encourage, widows, well, anyone with loss, I'm recently going through that with another friend, is to remember the happy, the warm memories. And it's like a warm, cozy blanket, because we can really go down that rabbit hole of sadness and grief, and leads to depression, and life just gets cut off. Right. And so it is important that if you're blessed to have someone like you in their life, which I am, but if not, they've got to reach out.
Yeah. I think all women put on layers of protection, okay? They cover up hurts and sorrows and heartaches. And when we can do that in any case. But certainly after a loss like that, a husband or child or whatever it is, you do start to put on layers of protection. You have a very unknown future ahead of you. You're fearful, even fearful about what will I do without him.
Yes.
Every sort of thing must go.
Sure.
That's why, as a friend, and that's what you asked me, I must let the silence be there until she's ready for me.
Exactly.
And so I think if I was talking to somebody who, like myself, blessed to have a husband at this point, I would say that don't force anything, you know. And I have several friends who have lost husbands in the last year or so. So I just want to be there for them till they're ready.
Right. Matter of fact, two of your sisters.
Well, yes, that's my other acquaintance with another phase of grief. My sister Judy and husband Kevin. Kevin was 55.
Wow. Really?
When he died. He had cancer. And the thing is, I was with Judy when we were in the hospital room, and the diagnosis was 5 months. And then I was with Judy and Kevin at the first chemo. And then I was with Judy and Kevin the night he died at the hospice facility, and we walked out the door with just his belongings. And so I really was involved and engaged in that kind of spousal loss, okay? And I remember telling Judy when they lived in Denver, and I had been back and forth quite a bit, but I remember telling Judy when I left, I've been here with you and Kevin through all of this to help you and support you. But now the grief is yours.
Yes.
I can't do that for you. You're the one that has to do it. So I do feel that it comes that time for a woman who's lost a husband, all the support she's got, she has to do the grieving.
Absolutely. And what a perfect segue, because one of the things certainly for me is every day I read a devotional.
Oh, you do?
And God bless you, you've written two of these, Views from the Water's Edge and Pebbles for Prayer and Ponderings. Yeah. And I especially like this one because it also leads to the next part of it. But reading devotionals really inspires me, and it triggers thought. And because I have, dear friends like yourself that say, well, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about that? But we expand on it. And the other thing that I've become very disciplined about is journaling.
Yes, I know.
Journaling is your safe deposit box. Yeah. You can write anything, whether it's hurt, tears, anger, laughter. It's like unloading. You're putting it in a safe place where you're not going to be judged or criticized, or maybe you're fortunate enough to have someone laugh or cry with you.
Yes.
But that is so key. That's two things that I think is so important if you can do that. Because you might not be willing to share something even with your closest friend, but you can share it with God.
Yeah, that's true. And, I would imagine if you've never journaled before, this loss would be the catalyst to do that. If you've never done it. With loss, you can't even believe the words you can put on paper. I mean, it's everything within you, just pouring it out. And those very words that I said, sometimes there's not a language that you could use to express an emotion. How do you describe an emotion? So
you write your thoughts, whatever you're thinking at that moment, and then from there,
I agree, yeah.
That is one way to do it, for sure.
Well, I started writing devotionals for Stonecroft in like 2000. I threw in a couple of things to their publication, and they accepted them, and so I thought, maybe I'll write a couple more things. And before I knew it, I was a writer for them. So that's how I got my start, was Views, and I always wanted to live at the water's edge.
Yes.
And the good Lord brought us here under bad circumstances, but I've been able to. I've always had the saying, bloom where you're planted, but I like you can bloom where you're planted.
Right.
Yes, bloom where you're planted, because God does that for us. And I do feel my pebbles and my water have brought a lot of that to me.
And to all of us.
I thank you for that. Yes, Minnie, I tell you, I haven't experienced but just have watched it. Yeah, here's the other thing I want to say about that. is that grief, in its rawness, is so devastating. But then, with time, do people forget that? Do your friends kind of forget? And here's one thing that's very important to me. I have a couple of friends here, and let alone my sisters, that if you go out and if you're talking with a group of women and you say, well, how long has your husband been gone? Yeah, he died about 12 years ago, Cedric did. And you say to yourself, okay, so those people don't know, but he's just my husband. Imagine being with the people that knew them. Imagine being with my friends and I get to tell Pat about George or, Terry about Ross. That's what I found out with my sisters. Barbara lost her husband. My sister Barbara then lost her husband, 55 years of marriage, during the COVID. And she watched as the ambulance took him away. He did not die of COVID, but eventually, in the hospital for the little bit of time that he was there, she got to see him at the end of his life. Okay. We all know of circumstances like that. So we sisters were able to get together in October of last year, finally again. And there, it was so comforting to sit around the table. And we talked about Ed and Kevin. Yeah. It wasn't your husband or this or that. And I think women, I think that's so important that I need to be with my friends.
Yes.
And I need to say their husbands' names and talk about them and reminisce. You have that. You've had that from the beginning of all the women that you've been with that have lost husbands.
Absolutely. I've been so blessed with that.
I know.
And I think it really is hard. Grief is a process.
Yes, it is.
And if you're blessed to have people walk with you, it's great. Sorrow is what you tuck in your heart, and you carry that.
Yeah.
But, as I said, if you can remember the happy times, I'm part of a group, and hopefully the audience someday will get to meet them, the Wild Widows. And we have so much fun, and that's exactly, we talk about, Anne talks about her husband, John, and John and my husband, Cedric, were hunting partners. Well, there's some stories to tell. But, that if you can recall and remember the happy times, you realize there'll be no more with your husband, but, sharing those kind of processes are really healthy and whole. But it's hard because you have to learn to reach out.
Yeah, I know you know that.
Yeah.
I have 5 sisters. I'm one of 10. And so I have 5 sisters, and so we're now Zooming. We Zoom once a month. And it is at those times, that we can talk about Ed. Barbara cleaned out something from Ed's just a couple of weeks ago. We talked about that, and so I like that. And also texting them, meeting for coffee. I would just say to any friend, don't stop, I know there's other things involved, but you asked me what would I do as a friend. First of all, wait for them. And the second thing is definitely stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Meet for coffee and talk about Ross or remember the fun things, those kinds of things.
I agree.
That's medicine.
Yes. And the other thing that I was blessed with, and I would encourage widows to do, is to, like for me, when I had just moved to San Diego, when I met you, I'd probably been here a couple months, but I was so welcomed.
Right.
One of the things that was so helpful for me was being able to, you talk about reach out, but, going with a friend to Stonecroft, to the Women's Connection, and of course, wouldn't you know, I sat right next to you.
Right.
Well, that was the beginning, and here we are.
Yeah.
But I encourage women to seek, I also belong to the Assistance League. I belong to the Salvation Army. And you meet this whole diverse.
Yes.
And then, of course, because of our Women's Connection, got involved in Bible studies, which is so wonderful. I seldom miss unless I'm out of town.
We're together once a week.
Yes.
I love it.
We are.
I know. Studying God's Word and sharing and caring. And think of that bond. If a woman would just do that.
Yeah. If it's only with one friend.
Absolutely.
And then it starts to grow, as you're ready, because not everybody is outgoing or,
I get it. But Minnie, don't you think there are stages for that to happen?
Absolutely.
That we have to be sensitive to Well, maybe just can I pick you up and maybe just visit a Bible study?
A cup of coffee?
Yeah, or a cup of coffee
Yeah,
or
just
something.
simple.
Yeah.
The other thing that's so important to widows too is if you have family and their involvement. But the flip side of that is, as a widow, you're the one taking care, making sure your kids are okay, or Cedric's close friends. Oh my goodness, and so you have to be strong, or that's how I've always looked at it for me.
Right.
That's not necessarily true for everybody else, but that is also a burden that falls upon you that you have to deal with.
Yes.
But then, as you say, as the grieving process, settles down a little bit, it's really up to you. And if you're blessed to have friends to say, hey, how about a cup of coffee?
Right.
Go. Do it.
Just do it.
As our
Just do
friend
it.
Marilyn says, just do it.
You bet. I agree. I hate to tell a widow what to do because I'm not, and I praise God for that.
But you are a friend.
I am, and that's I just cherish that, to be able to be a friend to someone who needs me. I do. That's what I like to do.
Yeah, and you do it well. Pat, I can't thank you enough for coming today. It was just wonderful.
Thank you. We've talked about this since the day I met you almost, and today we could both be very sentimental that here we sit.
Yeah, and here we sit.
Here we sit.
I would like you to tell us, besides the Widow's World website, where we can also, our viewers can get your devotionals.
Right. So I'm working with, this one is at a publishing house called Redemption Press. And this one is at Redemption Press. And that one I see is on Amazon, and it's always been, but I'm seeing now it's kind of, you probably know this because you're having difficulty yourself.
Yes.
I'm having difficulty with it. But I do want to say I do have a website, and not a problem at all. It just says contact me on there, and I can direct you.
Great.
So,
Well, and it's also, all that information's also on our website.
Yes.
So we know we're going to see you again.
I hope
Trust
so.
me.
I hope so.
So thank you and bless you.
And
I want to thank all of you for joining us today here on Widow's World and another session of Widow's Talk. For more information and additional helpful content and topics, visit us at widowsworld.com and follow us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at Widow's World Official. Again, thank you for joining us today. God bless.